Stories don't end when the headlines stop. Across our community, there are cases that remain unsolved and families who are still waiting for answers. Over time, details can fade, files can be shelved, and public attention moves on, but cold cases are never truly closed. They live on in memories, in unanswered questions, and in the hope that one day, someone will come forward with information that matters. This program, The Big Two Files, takes a closer look at some of those cases, and many of them still rely on one thing above all else: you. These are cold cases, investigations that never reached a resolution and continue to depend on new attention to move forward. This is The Big Two Files. Welcome everyone back to another episode of Big Two Files. If you've seen us before on TV, then you know a little bit of how this works. I'm here with CEO and President of Odessa Crime Stoppers, Susan Rogers. Susan, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Susan Rogers. I'm the CEO for Odessa Crime Stoppers. Been with that group for about 38 years.
Awesome. And for those who are not familiar, or if you haven't seen our stories, we've been working together every month for the past year, I think it's been. And we've been just highlighting some local cold cases in our area to help spotlight and really bring these stories to life and spark, a conversation in our communities and, hopefully get some answers and justice for these cases. So today I'm with Susan Rogers, like I've said, and you may have seen her before on TV, but I'd really like to get a second to get to know the person behind what we see, in these 4-minute segments that I've been doing. I'd really like to take the time to get to know Susan. So Susan, could you explain to me a little bit about your background and what really led you into this work in the first place?
Okay. Well, I am a native Odessan, been here since I was about 2 years old. Born in Big Springs, Texas, so in Texas my entire life. Back when, in about 1981 or so, I was in an automobile accident where I was hit by a drunk driver. I was young then, wasn't really interested in criminal justice system, didn't really know anything about it, but through that experience, I found that the criminal justice system actually failed me, not from the law enforcement side of it, but when the case went to a court system, the court system actually failed me. So that kind of intrigued me into how law enforcement and courts and those sort of things worked. Fast forward a couple of years, and a Mothers Against Drunk Driving organization opened up here, and so I joined that group, and we did a lot of community outreach, things like that. I was approached by an individual from the police department asking if we would do a ride-along, which we did, several ride-alongs for DWI patrols and things like that were related to Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And through that, I was asked to be on the Crime Stopper board of directors. So I was on the board for a couple of years before the board decided to break off on their own and hired me as their executive director, and I've been there for the past 38 years.
Awesome. Yeah, I know you recently celebrated a milestone. So congratulations,
Yes,
by the way.
Thank you.
But yeah, I know we see on TV, at least, people may have seen you talk about these cold cases.
Yes.
But beyond that, Odessa Crime Stoppers does a lot more. So I'd like to, touch a little bit on that as well.
Sure.
The tip line and everything.
We do a lot of community education. You have to educate the public on how Crime Stoppers works and the reason to use Crime Stoppers. So we do that. We have a lot of safety tips that we give out at different events and on our social media. We get involved in whatever's happening at the moment. There's a lot of vaping issues. So we've got big vape display we take out and introduce parents to what vapes look like, because they can be disguised in all different kinds of things. We actually were a hub for Narcan for a while on the fentanyl. Fentanyl is still a big issue right now. As a matter of fact, just read an article where some fentanyl was actually found in a vape cartridge here in Texas. So it was down in South Texas, but if it's in Texas at all, it's up close to us. So those kind of things we educate the public about. We also have a student Crime Stopper program, very active, and that's where I met you.
Yes, yeah.
And you were one of our student Crime Stoppers. It's very active within the school system. Those officers are very active, a school setting is a community for those students, and they need an outlet to be able to report crime that's happening there as well. So along with the cold cases and things we do the student crime stoppers, and we do just everyday crimes that are happening, fugitives. We work with the Marshal Service, we work with the Texas Rangers, all of the different law enforcement agencies, of course the Sheriff's Office and the Police Department. So anytime anybody has information on a crime or they think they have some information, we encourage them to give us a call, and of course we pay cash rewards as well.
Right. And thank you for bringing that up too, our relationship. That is how we met.
Yes.
I was a student.
She was a little kid.
Yes, really little. Yeah, and I remember we had some conversations about some cold cases, and actually that's what sparked, this, the Big Two files, was just me, looking back and thinking, it'd be really awesome to be able to learn more about the other ones that we have, because we had only, I think it was just briefly in a car ride where you brought up a certain cold case, and
it's funny, those car rides we took, a lot of that revolved around crime. I mean, not the norm for a teenager, but you did become very interested, and several teenagers have become interested, and so it's a great opportunity.
Yes, for sure. And when I think of Crime Stoppers too, I think of a lot of advocating, for the community, and also, for victims of crime and family members, which kind of brings me back to cold cases. These are real people with real family members, real people that have been affected by this. So I just like to take a moment to think about that, and then shift into today.
Well, absolutely. The family members that are out there, you and I've talked about this time and time again, but if you go interview a family member, even if it's been, a dozen years ago, they always say it was like it was yesterday. They never forget. They have not forgotten one part of the tragedy that's happened within their family. And it's important that the rest of us not forget either. I'm a believer in out of sight, out of mind. So if it's not out there in the public, you're not keeping it out there in front of the public, the person that is involved in it or the people who might have information for us are able to just put that out of their mind and not think about it. So we like to keep it out there. We appreciate you guys for helping us with that. It helps us get that word out a whole lot further, and it helps those families to remember, to know that we have not forgotten either.
Yes, and we definitely haven't. I know I haven't. It's kind of been a part of my everyday life. You drive past a building and you're like, that's where that happened, and so truly it does kind of
part
change.
Of you.
Yeah, it really
just
does.
becomes a part of you.
Yeah. And then, as we've done this series, you see we're kind of mentioning the family members. What feedback have you also received from the community? Has there been any tips as well?
Yes, we've gotten tips in. The family is grateful as well that we keep the name of their family member out there and their photograph out there, and we keep looking for that. So I've had family members that have contacted me and given me more information that we need on their family member, so that we can describe them a little better and talk about them. We have gotten several tips. One of the first, we have a podcast as well called Behind the Line, and during that podcast we ran a series of cold cases, and one of those cold cases, we were doing an interview with a former or retired TABC agent, and in visiting with him, we got to talking about the type of car the man that was killed had been in, just chatting, not really getting into too much of the case. And Ryan Kelly, who's with he's one of our coordinators, and he is with the constable's office now. He got ready to cut all that video and audio up, and he said, "Hey, you want to leave that part out about the car?" And I said, "No, that actually shows us the character of B.L. King. That's the case we were working on. He was a little bit flashy, that kind of thing, and he actually drove a DeLorean, first DeLorean that had been in Odessa. And I could remember when we were talking with Dyer Light from the TABC, I can remember that car being parked on Grandview, and I told Ryan, let's just leave it in there because it is a part of B.L. King. And leaving that in there led to a couple of tips coming in directly related to that vehicle. So all these years that we've run that story on BL, nobody's come forward with that information for us. And so we were able to get that over to the Odessa Police Department, who is investigating that case. And, of course, they're looking into the information that we received from there.
Wow. Yeah, so really reiterating the fact that tips, no matter how small, are really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We say it always could be that missing piece of the puzzle, and even though you think that it's not something real important, it could be that one tiny thing that investigator needs to wrap that case up.
Yeah. And kind of, going right into it, I think, you mentioned before that this has really been meaningful to family members and the community, I think, to be able to hear, this is what really happened. Because sometimes I think when we think of crime and cold cases, we don't necessarily think of it in Odessa or where we live. We think of, when you listen to podcasts, it may happen, elsewhere. But
somewhere else.
Yeah, we have cold cases in our area that are just as important, and even more important because they're in our area.
Oh, absolutely. We've got dozens and dozens. We have enough cases that the Odessa Police Department has an assigned investigator to cold cases, and she is absolutely amazing. Her name is Lauren Gonzalez, and she's young, and she's a fresh set of eyes, and she's been able to go in and do some amazing things over there. We also have a Texas Ranger by the name of Jeff Strain. He is our cold case ranger for our area here, and he too has done some absolutely amazing things with technology and putting fresh eyes on those cases, and just bulldogs. The sheriff's department as well has an investigator that looks at cold cases over there too, that does a great job. So yeah, we're very fortunate. It's sad that we have that many cold cases here, but we're very fortunate to have a great set of law enforcement eyes on them.
Yeah, and yeah, for sure. And I wanted to also take a little moment to talk about terminology, like a little terminology time.
Okay.
I did some research before I came here because I was thinking of the name cold case, which is what they call it, and it's for 3 or more years, correct, is when a case becomes cold?
Yes.
No.
Basically when an investigator runs out of leads.
Yeah.
Runs out of leads and has nowhere else to go.
Right. And yeah, so that's really the heart of why we're here, is to kind of introduce ourselves, but also get into the cold cases that we will be talking about today.
The first case we take a closer look at is one that has remained open for several years. Time has passed, memories have faded, and records have grown old. But the questions surrounding what happened have never gone away. For her family, the search for answers has continued long after the investigation slowed. This is the cold case of Sue Brooks Powell.
On the night of December 28th, 1979, which is going to be 46 years ago, coming right up on the anniversary of that, the Ector County Sheriff's Office came across a Chevrolet van that was parked along Highway 866, about a half a mile north of University, which is going to be in far western Ector County. And inside, he discovered the body of Sue Brooks Powell. She was a mother of 5. She had been shot to death. They believe she had been murdered sometime between 10:30 on December 26th, 10:30 p.m. on December 26th, and 6 o'clock the next morning. And there has been countless hours of investigation done by the sheriff's office on this. Many investigators have had their hands on this case and looked at it from several different angles, but they've just run up against a roadblock and were not able to get that one solved ever. Not that it's not solvable, because I believe that it probably still is, but we're coming up on that time frame where, this is 46 years old. People that were witnesses at the time, or people that might have had information at the time, may not even be with us anymore, or they're getting older, may not be able to remember things quite like it was, but they're still out there. And if anything about this triggers some information that you think in your mind might be useful to us, we still want that information. Even if it's just a memory you have of something at that time, please give us a call and let us see if it's related to the case.
Right. And also, again, tips, no matter how small, are always important, even
Absolutely.
if it's just a picture, correct?
Right, correct, absolutely. And the crazy thing about this case you and I were talking about a while ago, there's actually 3 generations of this Powell family that have been involved in homicides. Denise Christie Brothers Powell, which would have been an in-law, not a blood-related Powell, was murdered. And if you'll remember, when they got Samuel Little, that was the serial killer that drove the truck that went cross country, he actually confessed to killing her after all of those years. Her son, Dustin Powell, was killed not too many years ago, and he was killed coming out of a club one night out on Highway 80, and they've never been able to find his murderer either. So it's just kind of crazy that 3 generations of a family would have had someone murdered.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of the day, too. You said she could have been killed from the 26th to, what was it?
The next morning, so the 27th. Morning. So about 10:30, the day after Christmas.
Yeah, I was about to say,
10:30 at night, the day after Christmas, until the next morning.
Yeah, and I can't even, when we go over these cold cases, right, we talk about the facts and everything, but just also the fact that this was a mother of 5.
Yes.
And it was the day after Christmas.
Right.
I can't even begin to imagine
what that tragedy's like. I know, absolutely. And I know that she still has family here. There are still family members here that are interested in knowing what happened. I used to get calls from her husband every time we would run it, wanting to know if we had any answers, if we knew what was going on. So I know there's still family here, and there's still family interested in knowing what happened to her.
Yeah. And even after 46 years, I can imagine. That would stick with me if it was my relative. So.
Absolutely, and you want those answers for those family members.
Exactly. And for just some follow-up questions though, when we think about back to 46 years, what were some of the investigations like? What was the investigative process? Because I can imagine it'd be very different from today.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
As evidence,
you weren't
as it
even
relates
born
to
then, right?
No, I was not.
You weren't even thought about
yeah,
then.
so I don't even know. Yeah.
Well, back when I first started, of course, this would be about 38 years ago, there was a lot more boots on the ground type investigations, going door to door, knocking on doors, seeing what people knew, those kind of investigations, whereas today you can sit in front of a computer and get a lot of stuff, things can be mapped out. I like looking at those old case files because they actually had drawings of the scenes instead of something that's computerized, digitally done. So there would have been a lot of knocking on doors, a lot of running down leads, a whole lot more of that type of investigation that would be happening out there, interviewing people, having to hunt people down. Back we didn't have computers to be able to hunt people down, figure out where their last known 5 addresses were. You had to go knock on doors, and when they'd moved from house to house to house, and you had to track those down. So the investigations back then were probably a little more lengthy from that standpoint. And of course, DNA wasn't even really thought about back then, being able to do anything with DNA. They had fingerprints. I think one of the most interesting things I found on some of these old cases is those fingerprints were done on little index type cards, and they were filed at the sheriff's office and at the police department. And you had to be trained to read those fingerprint cards, and they would manually have to do that. And I know we ran a case not too long ago where they actually identified a girl. It was a county case, but the city had arrested her for a little petty shoplifting and had fingerprinted her. And just on happenstance and from the investigation, the deputy sheriff went to the police department to see if they had ever arrested anybody, and started looking at fingerprint cards and were able to match those up. But those were actually done individually with a little magnifying glass type scope, where they had to analyze those fingerprints by hand.
Yeah, I remember that case. Yeah, Brenda Van. I don't remember her name.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. We've gone over some of these cases, so if you guys have missed them, you can always find them on our website, yourbasin.com, by the way, where we have more of the Big Two Files episodes or not this episode, but stories that you might have missed.
Very interesting stories.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And important ones as well. So back to, the case, when did we know how she passed? What was
shot.
Okay.
Yeah, she was shot. So there would have been that kind of evidence in the vehicle itself. I believe, I don't remember whether the file said she was shot there or in the vehicle, or if she was just placed in that vehicle, but the end result was that she had been shot.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, especially I think when we hear about these cases that happen kind of in this timeline. And so you can kind of, I guess, put yourself more in their spots, you know?
Right.
Which is why we kind of like to go monthly, so that we can, especially during Christmas, to me it's just I mean, it's just tragic.
Yeah,
for
it
sure.
really is.
Yeah. And you said there wasn't very much on this case.
No, this is they put a lot of due diligence into tracking people down and talking to people, but they were never able to come up with a conclusion on it. So it's a cold case. It's open, 46 years old, but still interested in any kind of information anybody would have.
And have you had any contact with any family members?
Probably not in the last 10 or 15 years. I haven't had contact with anyone. But like I said, I do know that there are people out there that are missing her. And there's a lot of Powell families still that live in town. And I'm sure they remember this very vividly and would like a close to it.
Yeah. And for anybody who's watching who may be related, do you have a message to them?
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got something you want to tell us about it, if you remember something about it, if something has been bothering you all these years about it, and you need to let somebody know, if you want to give us a call, it's 333-TIPS. Or you can go to 33tips.org and leave us a web tip. We also have an app called P3 Tips. So you really don't even have to talk to us. You could just go on there and you can remain anonymous. Or, if you're a family member and you just want to visit about it, we'd be glad to talk with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I know we have another one that we're going to be going over today. This one we have a little bit more information on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think we can just jump right into it.
Some cases leave behind more uncertainty than answers. Time passed, but clarity never came. We now turn to the cold case of Mary Kathleen Rodriguez.
This case happened 35 years ago on December 30th, 1990, so we're coming up on the 35th anniversary. Mary Kathleen Rodriguez was 26 years old at the time of her death. She actually went by Kathleen. That's how her family and her friends knew her. She grew up in Pampa, Texas, had a love for little kids and did a lot of babysitting and that sort of thing when she was younger. Her mother is still alive, living in Pampa, as are a couple of her brothers. She's got family up there, and some nieces and nephews that are still there. I've actually had the opportunity to visit with Kathleen's mom a couple of years ago. She's the case that we talked about not having, when we put it on our website, we always like to put a photograph of them up there, and we did not have a photograph of her. For years, we've run this case over and over and over and haven't come up with anything. And for years, I looked for pictures, I looked for anything at all. And finally, probably about 15 years ago, I found her headstone, a picture of her headstone online, and was able to put that on our website. And I always felt terrible about that because we didn't have a picture to put up there of her. And, she's a person and she needs to be seen. With technology, the way it's changed these days, one day I was looking at the case, pulled it out and was looking at it, and I thought, there's got to be somebody on social media that's related to her, and started looking around trying to find things out. I even got in touch with an online garage sale type place in Pampa, thinking maybe that her family was still up there, and they posted information for me looking for something, and nothing ever came from that. So I dug a little bit deeper, and I found what I thought would be a brother of hers, and there were a couple of email addresses, and I sent out an email address I'll never forget, because I've been working on this one for many years, and like I said, I always felt bad because we didn't have a picture of her, and so I found this email address, and I'd been working late in the office that night, and I thought, I'm just going to send an email to these two addresses, tell them who I am, and just see if anything comes up. Well, by the time I could get to the office the next morning, there was an email from her brother, and that brought so much peace to me that we had found a family member. I visited with him, extensively visited with him. He talked a lot about his sister. They still miss her and love her, and he put me in touch with his mother, their mother. And a couple of days later, the phone rang, and it was her. And I was so excited to be able to talk to her and be able to visit about Kathleen. She's the one that actually told me that she did not go by Mary. She went by Kathleen. Talked to me about how much she loved kids and that she was just one of those. She was that girl in the neighborhood that babysat everybody's kids for them. And that's actually what led her to this area. So there was a family there in Pampa that she had babysitted their boys for many, many years. And when that family got ready to move to Midland, they asked her to move with them and be a live-in babysitter. So that's what put her in our area out here. So I actually, when we did the podcast, I was able to talk to one of those boys And he had nothing but wonderful things to say about Kathleen, how much fun they always had with her and how much they loved her, and the parents did as well. So that speaks to her character and her personality and her love for kids. And so I guess the boys got up old enough that they didn't need an in-home babysitter anymore, anybody to stay in in-home childcare. So she actually, Kathleen moved to Odessa. She got a job at a convenience store out in West Odessa, and had an issue, I believe, with a landlord on a place that she was staying, and ended up moving in with a family that had 2 girls. And those 2 girls needed babysitters from time to time. So she wound up living at that home, and she would take care of those kids. But she also had a job. She still worked at the convenience store that was out there. On December 30th of 1990, she was at the residence that she lived at on Clendenden Street in the 1000 block of Clendenden. I always have a hard time with that street name.
Yes.
And she was found murdered in that house. I know your listeners are probably thinking, okay, she was found murdered in the house. It was a residence that she resided in, but it was not her home. She stayed there with some people, and like I said, had a job and worked taking care of their kids every once in a while. On Christmas, that a few days before Christmas, a friend of Kathleen's had invited her to spend Christmas at her house, which she did. But according to that friend, Kathleen had gotten sick and went back to her house, or the residence she was living in, on the 26th of December. And the afternoon of the 26th of December, or the 28th of December, would be the last time that Kathleen was seen alive. Her movements from the 26th to the 28th are really unknown. Investigators believe that she was sick and she went to that home and stayed there trying to recuperate from that. According to the family that she lived with, they left for Sweetwater about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the 28th, and Kathleen was at home. They were most likely the last people to see her alive. Kathleen did not have a driver's license or have a vehicle, so her friends and a young man that she was seeing kind of got concerned when they were calling. And of course, back then, there's no cell phones, anything like that, so they're calling on a home phone number. And they got concerned when they couldn't get a hold of her. And the young man that she was seeing went over to the house and looked around the house, couldn't get anybody to answer the door. He walked around the side of the house and looked in a back window, and he saw what he believed to be Kathleen's body laying in a pool of blood. And so he left and immediately went and called the sheriff's office from there. So the sheriff's office actually found her body on the 30th of December back in 1980.
Wow. And I know on the website, it also mentions that there was no signs of forced entry. Is that correct?
That's correct. No signs of forced entry. They went through the house. Of course, the family that she'd been living with were not there. They had gone on to Sweetwater to have Christmas with family there. It was determined later through an autopsy that she had died from several blows to the head and her face. And they were not closed injuries. I mean, this was a bloody crime scene. It was gruesome. It was bloody. When the young man walked around the house, he was able to see blood in the house around her body. They also, through the investigation, decided that Kathleen may have known who her attacker was, and that's simply because there was no sign of forced entry into the house.
Yeah, I was about to say that when there's no signs of forced entry, that usually can kind of lead to the conclusion that it was somebody that she may have known.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So this has kind of a crazy twist to it, if you want to put it that way. So let's back up a few months earlier. So on September 7th of the same year that Kathleen was killed in, there were these 2 kids playing, and they one of them crashed into the other one on a bicycle. And as little kids would do, as kids do back then, one ran home to her dad and gave him one story, and the other one ran home to her dad and gave him another story. Well, that led to both parents meeting up in a yard. They actually came together and met up in a yard to have a discussion. One of the girls' father was Eddie Bryant, and his child said that another girl had run into her with her bicycle. So Eddie Bryant goes over to confront the other father, and that man's name was Paul Shaw. So he goes over to confront Mr. Shaw about the incident that the daughters have just been involved in, and they lived about 3.5 miles away from each other. So they wound up in Paul Shaw's father-in-law's yard, and that's going to be a Paul Ryburn. The two fathers got into an argument, and that argument turned heated and became a fist fight in the middle of Mr. Ryburn's yard. Several witnesses said that Paul and Eddie were going at it pretty good. Paul Shaw and Eddie were going at it pretty good, and that Mr. Ryburn, in an attempt to break the fight up, got involved in the fight, as did his wife, Mr. Ryburn's wife. At some point, Mr. Ryburn got attacked in this as well. Eddie Bryant managed to get a wooden 2x4 that was in the yard, and he struck Paul Ryburn with it multiple times. There were several witnesses to that that said that Mr. Ryburn, that both Bryants, because Eddie's wife, Etta, by that time had wound up over there. And so the fight, this was just a big, huge family fight, out in the middle of this yard. There were several witnesses that said that Eddie and Etta both had struck Mr. Ryburn about his face area. The beating caused major injuries to Paul Ryburn, but it did something else. He had some he had a heart condition and some heart problems earlier in the year. So he'd had health issues before the fight began. Well, as a result of the fight, where he got hit in the face so many times, and was severely beaten, his heart gave out, and they rushed him by ambulance to the hospital, and he suffered a major heart attack and eventually died from that heart attack. So it was kind of a question as to whether or not he died from the fight, whether he had a heart attack, was the heart attack brought on by the fight, which was initially what they thought in the case. A forensic pathologist, however, did the autopsy and said that Paul Ryburn's cause of death was a heart attack. So sheriff's deputies had to leave everything alone there. It was just a heart attack, and they kind of had to close the case, unfortunately, and walk away from it. But as time would have it, there was the forensic pathologist that had looked at Paul Ryburn's case was in Lubbock. He had some issues with a lot of cases of his that got reviewed. He actually became kind of infamous for the things that happened over there, and a lot of cases got overturned because of him. At the time, that pathologist had said that Mr. Ryburn had died of natural causes. We fast forward a few years, this happens with that pathologist over there, and we get a new DA in and a new medical examiner here in Ector County, and they decide to reopen the case and get it before a different pathologist, which they did. There was a medical examiner here by the name of Sparks Vesey. He was a great guy, wonderful investigator. He decided to open that case back up. They went to they exhumed the body, went to a different pathologist, and that pathologist said no, that the heart attack was brought on by the beating, so therefore it was a murder. So investigators at that point were able to get murder warrants for Eddie and Etta Bryant and arrested them in the murder of Paul Ryburn's case. So they go to court. Courts are tricky sometimes. They go to court. They're accused of murdering Paul Ryburn. The indictment said they were accused of murdering Paul Ryburn by hitting and punching and beating him with their hands and fists and slamming and crushing the chest of Paul Ryburn. That's what actually was in the indictment. Whole case was sent off to court. Looked like it was going to be a cut and dry case. Eddie Bryant was indicted on the murder charge. Ultimately, the jury found that Eddie did not murder Paul Ryburn. They instead found him guilty of assault causing bodily injury, which was a Class A misdemeanor, and they put him on 6 months probation. And Etta, her charges were actually dropped. So everybody out there is probably wondering, like I did when I started reading all this, how this is connected to Kathleen's case. Kathleen was murdered in a savage attack of blunt force trauma in the home of Eddie and Etta Bryant. So here he's been accused of this savage beating, and he actually went to jail. I mean, he didn't go to jail, but he did 6 months probation for an assault causing bodily injury, and that's the home that that Kathleen was found in. Now, it's important to point out that Eddie or Etta Bryant, neither one have ever been arrested or indicted or anything for Kathleen's case. It's just a strange coincidence that this happened a few months before she was killed in that home.
Wow. Just a few months before. Wow.
Yes, September to December.
That is a twist. We were talking about this before, and she said there's a twist in this case. So, wow, yeah.
You can imagine my surprise. I was doing research on the case itself, and of course got on the internet and was diving into all of that, looking at what was in there. And when I put in those names, when I put in the Bryant's names, that's when all of this popped up about Mr. Ryburn. And so I got to dig it a little further into his case and was able to find all of this information. And it was shocking to me that this happened just months before Kathleen was killed.
And so investigators at the time, so they knew that, but they never did make a correlation, like any connections. Really?
It's one of those things that she lived in that house, so. Kathleen's fingerprints would have been on everything in that house. Etta and Eddie's fingerprints would have been on everything in that house. I know that there was a ton of investigative time spent on this case. They were just never able to narrow down what happened in there. I believe that Eddie and Etta Bryant are still alive to this day. I have not been able to get in touch with them to talk with them about their side of what happened or what they might remember happened leading up to Kathleen's death. I think that one of the daughters is still alive. They would have been young at the time. They would have been, 5 to 10 years old at the time. I would love to visit with one of them and just see if Kathleen had some other issues. Had somebody been, harassing her that we didn't know about, back then that Etta and Eddie would have known about. And, if there'd been any issues with somebody else that Kathleen had an issue with, it'd be interesting to visit with them.
No, for sure. Yeah, I can imagine. Like, especially speaking with somebody who was there and like she lived with you. So, would you want to share a message to them if they are watching this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Etta or Eddie, either one, if you are out there and want to talk to me about that, I would really love to talk to you about that. I mean, there were, how was Kathleen feeling, at the time that things were going on? Was she having issues with somebody? Were there other people, in her life that she'd had a problem with that maybe her and Etta were close and maybe she confided in Etta about things that were happening in her life that she might not have told anyone else. And at the time, Ms. Bryant may not have thought that was something important, or Mr. Bryant, or, maybe Kathleen was out with the kids at the time in a park or something, and somebody approached them, and maybe the girls knew something. I mean, it'd be interesting to know what they knew about Kathleen's life at the time.
Yeah. And you said when you did the Behind the Line podcast, you also spoke with the mother?
Oh, yes. I got to speak with her mother. She, Ellen Rodriguez, still thinks about it every day, has some items that belong to Kathleen that she has that are very near and dear to her. She was very emotional when I talked to her, which just shows you that they don't ever forget. I mean, that's a mother and her child that she doesn't know what happened to her. She described Kathleen as very, very friendly, very good with kids. She's a beautiful girl, and she's the one that provided pictures for me. I've got pictures. I think I've sent you the pictures, or you pulled the pictures down, but, she loved to get dressed up. She loved to do her hair. She loved to do her makeup. She did that with the girls when she stayed over there, pampered those little girls. And when she would babysit little girls, they would get all made up, that sort of thing. So, your typical teenager that loved all of that. Kathleen didn't get the opportunity to become a mom and have her own kids and dote on her kids that way. I can only imagine that she would have been that kind of mom, from everything that I've heard about her. I was also able to talk to some of the kids that she had babysat at the time. They're adults now, and they still remember her. I mean, the boys that she came to Midland with, that family, one of them vividly remembers her and remembers, playing with her and the things that she would do and how much fun they had with her, as did one of the other girls that she babysat. I think one of the other girls was like 7 or 8 years old, and she told me that Kathleen would do her hair and would do their makeup and would, just the girly girl things that you do when you're babysitting the little ones like that. And you know, it really, really speaks to what kind of person Kathleen was when, 30 plus years later, you've got kids that she babysat that want to come out and speak to you and want to tell you what a special person she was and how much that she meant to them in their lives.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine. I mean, being that old and then remembering her and then wanting to share with you, her character. It says a lot about her character.
It says a whole lot about her, and even more so makes you, you and I talked about this last time about you just get personally involved. You can try not to be personally involved, but you get that way. I don't know I just don't know how you could, even the investigators get that way. And I don't know how you can be a part of that and not become emotionally involved, personally involved with those family members. Her mother, I've never got to meet her in person, but she was the sweetest thing. Her brother warned me when he called. He said, "Okay, Mom's a little rough around the edges, so get ready." And I was like, "Okay, I'm ready." And when she called, she was a little gruff in the beginning, but turned out to be a very nice lady. And you can tell that her heart still breaks over this.
Yeah, I can't even imagine, especially, living through another Christmas year after year, without your daughter.
Yeah, they have to think about it every Christmas that it's coming up on I did when I talked to you, when you and I visited, I said, "Hey, there's one we've got to get on because there's an anniversary right after Christmas and it's very important, not only to them, but it's important to me as well." Yes. And it's important that people out there understand that these are real people. You look at our website or you look at social media, you look at this on y'all's television, productions that y'all do, and you're looking at a picture, but you need to remember there's a real family behind that. There's a person behind that. There's a family that, even though it's been 35 years, there's a family that aches over this. And there's somebody out there that knows something. There absolutely is someone out there that knows something about this case.
Truly. And grief is, I'd say, it's one of the hardest and most complex emotions, but especially when I think of a cold case, something that doesn't have closure.
Right. They're just not knowing.
Yeah.
They're just not knowing what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to also, do we know how old she was? Did you mention that?
At the time, she was 26 years old.
Wow.
At the time.
26.
Yeah. So she was just getting her life started, just getting on track. Like I said, she had a young man that she was seeing, and her mother said they were getting very close. And, you don't know what could have come from that. You don't know how many, she loved kids. She probably would have had a household full of kids. So, and at this point now, she would have been a grandmother, so spoiling grandkids.
Yeah. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And when we hear these too, I get a lot of questions in my head as you're speaking. The forensic investigator, he also, or I don't know who it was, but did they also kind of do this case as well?
The original one was a Dr. Ralph Erdman, and you can your viewers and listeners can go out and look him up. It was crazy in Lubbock. He had a lot of trouble for some errors and things that he'd done, and a lot of cases got reversed, and a lot of that happened due to his cases and what happened with him there in Lubbock. And I don't know if he did Sue Brooks Powell's case or not. It's very likely. Those years are close together. But I'm very thankful that when Dr. Vesey realized what happened with some of the cases that they had that came out of that Lubbock office up there, that forensic pathology office up there, that Sparks Vesey was able to go back and get these cases out and look at them and say, we need to right a wrong here. And in Mr. Ryburn's case, they were able to go in and show that Mr. Ryburn was murdered. It wasn't, had it not been for that fight, he may not have died. That heart attack came from there. Now, again, I think my personal opinion was there was a failure in the court system side for not following through with that murder indictment, and just finding Mr. Bryant guilty of assault, I don't know. I wasn't there for the court hearing. I don't know what all was presented, that sort of thing. But, just from the little bit that I've looked through it, I think there was probably a miscarriage of justice there.
Mm-hmm. And, I'm not an investigator, but when I think of an investigator, with the Odessa Police Department, do they kind of take into account, maybe, I don't want to say failings of, previous detectives or police or the court system, but when they go through these cold cases, do they also kind of put into the context of the time period and who was presiding over it?
You know, I think that's one of the things that when you have these new young investigators come on and they're able to go back and look and go through some of these cases, and like I said, Lauren Gonzalez over at the Odessa Police Department, she's an amazing young lady, and she's able to see those things and go, okay, maybe this wasn't done exactly right, so let's look at it again. Not saying that the investigators made mistakes, because in this case, as far as Mr. Ryburn goes, those investigators did not make a mistake. You know, there was no mistake on that investigation side. That whatever happened came through the court system, and we don't know why it came from the court system that way. I mean, I haven't gone back and looked at those records for there, but yeah, they go back and they look at things, and they look at them from a different standpoint as to what was available. And it might not be that those investigators 40 years ago made any kind of mistake. They just didn't have the tools available to them now that investigators do, and they're able to go a little more in depth, look at things a little differently with a different pair of eyes, and put those tools that they now have available to them. So yeah, I think they go back and they review those cases and they look at it, even though they happened 40 years ago. What have we got in our toolbox today that could help solve that case?
Yeah. And for Kathleen's case, this happened in 1930. If I'm correct.
1990.
1990.
Yeah, okay, December 30th of 1990.
Okay.
Oh, gosh, 1930, I wasn't even born.
Yeah. Okay, and what was Powell's case was in?
Powell's case was in 1979.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
so it was 46 years ago, and Kathleen's is 35.
All right. I just want to make sure.
Yeah. Make sure we got all that right. Yeah.
And then for both of these cases, what are investigators, but also Crime Stoppers, kind of looking for now? Just
looking for anybody that would have been around at the time. You know, we've said it over and over again that 35 and 40 years ago, your life was different. Mm-hmm. And if you were around back in those days and you knew either one of these victims, and you have, you know, you might have been scared at the time to come forward. Your hands might have been tied where you couldn't come forward. And as life goes on, things change, divorces happen, things like that happen where you're not running with the same group of people anymore. You've matured, you've grown up, you've got your own family. You understand that, you know, there's a family out there, and my message to them would be, if you have that kind of information or you have something that you think is important, it's never too late. It's not too late to call us and let us know. Those investigators are still looking at those cases. They all have those binders sitting there in their offices. It's nothing for them to get that case out and look at it and use your information that you've given them to do some more investigation.
Yeah. And, you know, when we meet, or when we've met before in your offices and, you know, for these past cold cases, I always do like to ask if there's somebody watching who knows what happened or even, you know, committed the crime, what would you say to them?
If you committed that crime, it's time you come forward. I mean, you've carried that on your conscience. You've had that. You know, you don't want to go to your grave knowing that you did that. There's a family member out there that needs closure. Don't take that to your grave. Don't be that selfish. You know, be the one that comes forward. Step up to the plate. You know, we've talked about before how far DNA and that kind of technology has come. And, you know, you need to get in front of it. If you're involved in this and responsible for this, get in front of it, because those investigators today are going through those cases. They're putting that DNA to the test to find out if they can come up with something, come up with enough. And you don't want to be in the middle of a Christmas dinner and an investigator knock on the door with an arrest warrant because they've got your DNA and they know that they can make a case on you for a murder. So come forward now, do the right thing. You know, come forward, give us that information. Let's get it handled.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And like you said, that it would eat away at your conscience.
It has to.
Yeah, it has to.
Yeah. It's a very cold, you're a very, very cold person. I can't even imagine what that person is, that in the back of their head, they don't think about this, that something doesn't come up that reminds them of what they did.
Mm-hmm. And I know we've always talked about it, but there is hope in these cases.
Absolutely. Every case is solvable. I visit with Texas Ranger Jeff Strain, and that's probably one of his mottos, is that they're solvable. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of time and a matter of being able to get the right pieces to that puzzle. And that's why I think he does what he does. You know, you never lose hope. I don't lose hope. The family's not going to lose hope. Those investigators won't lose hope. You just don't.
Yeah. And that's why, we also, continue meeting. So just to help bring these to light and help kind of people to bring an awareness to these cases.
Right, just to reiterate that they're open, they're out there,
And there is hope.
There is hope. There's absolute hope. And, Kathleen's mother has a lot of hope. Her brothers have hope. There's just no way not to.
Mm-hmm. And I think, hope lives in our community and, in each conversation that people share about these cases.
Right.
And, I think hope also lives in this room as we continue talking about these, because
absolutely. I've drawn you into it now. You know these cases almost as good as I do at this point. And, I've heard you when you would come back in after a case and you'd been out to a scene, and I know one in particular when you went out to Steve Brosh's case, you were able to come across those neighbors that were there when it happened. And that connection draws you into that family, draws you into what happened to that. And so you have hope. Yeah. You have hope that it's going to get solved just exactly like we do.
Mm-hmm. And it's just so important to keep, talking about this. But what would you want to kind of share to the community on what they can do to kind of help also raise awareness?
Well, one of the things that the easiest thing you can do is when you see this on social media, share it. That it's just a touch of a button. Social media is such a good friend and a tool to law enforcement these days because it reaches worldwide. Share those when you see our posts out there about any cold case, about any of these crimes. When they see yours, share that, get it out there. Have a conversation about it. We talk about a lot of the cases that you and I have done. You go back out to the actual place where it happened, and the building might not be there anymore, but it was there at one time. I mean, talk about those things in the community. If you've got people, if you were part of that circle that Kathleen was in, or part of that circle that Mrs. Powell was in, talk with those friends, bring that up and y'all talk about it and see what you can each remember about it, and share that stuff. But the easiest thing you can do is to, when we can put this stuff out on social media, is share that post, let it get out there. I mean, that's a very simple thing that helps us more than you can imagine.
Yes, 100%. I agree. And I always try and, share these with as many groups as I can.
Right.
Facebook groups that have to do with cold cases or mysteries.
Right, absolutely.
It's really important to.
It's very important.
Visibility is,
It's the key at this point right now,
yeah.
because we've got to have somebody come forward in order for these cases to be solved.
Exactly. And then what do you hope, viewers who are watching kind of take away from all this today?
That there are those cases that are here local and they deserve our attention. They deserve a look and a second look and a third look and whatever it takes to get it done. And that they will continue to watch your episodes, that they'll continue to follow along with Crime Stoppers, check those websites and social media ever so often and look at those. And just remember that, the biggest thing is that anytime we show you a picture of a victim, there's family members behind that. Yes.
I was going to kind of end off with that, but I did want to mention that, by the way, thank you so much for coming. We are going to continue meeting up whenever we can to discuss these cold cases, and then hopefully start expanding. We have a lot in Odessa, and I think we'll go over more of them that we've already been over, but we're going to keep on highlighting these cases.
Absolutely. And we appreciate you. We talk about in Crime Stoppers that it's Crime Stoppers, law enforcement, and the media that make this happen. In Crime Stopper lingo, they refer to that as a three-legged stool, and if one part of that stool is missing, the stool falls, and it falls apart. So we appreciate you guys. We appreciate the stories and the time and the effort that you take with us. I know you do a lot of research into the cases just like I do, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate the viewers for taking a look and listening and not just scrolling past it.
Yes, you guys are also super important, one of the most important, because you guys are watching and you guys are sharing and, sparking that dialogue, sparks more hope. I did want to leave off with a quote from an American author. It's, "The dead cannot cry out for justice. It is a duty of the living to do so for them." So that is what we're doing here today, and what I'm going to keep doing, and what Susan and me are going to keep doing. So just thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next Big Two Files.
Behind every file and cold case, there is a family still waiting for answers. If you know something, even a detail that feels small, you can contact Odessa Crime Stoppers by phone or through the P3 Tips mobile app. You will remain anonymous. And remember, one tip can make a difference.